So now let's change our lookout to looking at the ACL and its mission.
Yes.
So actually, my first guest had on my show last year was your predecessor in
Yeah.
your job, and but it's been a year, more than almost a year and a half since then. So lots happened with ACL, but maybe we could just talk a little bit about refresh people about, the mission of the agency, a little bit about how it blends two different or similar communities. But what are your goals? What are the goals of the agency?
Absolutely. That's a great place to start our conversation today. And I can't thank my predecessor enough for she actually hired me at
Ah, okay,
ACL.
okay.
So she's a great mentor to me. So let me just get to ACL's mission, which you mentioned it actually earlier when you were introducing the program today. But our mission is to maximize the independence, well-being, and health of older adults, people with disabilities across the lifespan. That means throughout their entire life, and their families and caregivers.
Right.
And ACL was created, as you mentioned, I think also earlier on, around the fundamental principle that everybody, regardless of their age or disability, should be able to live independently and participate in their communities as much as they wish. We take a person-centered approach to things.
Hmm.
We believe that everybody has the right to make their own choices and to control decisions about their lives.
Right.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, yeah, go ahead.
I did want to mention, I mean, you asked me to talk a little bit about how we've evolved over the
Right.
years and
Sure.
how ACL started. So I do want to talk about a couple things about that. So
Hmm.
this year happens to be ACL's 10th anniversary.
Right.
We're actually a relatively young federal agency
Right.
as those agencies go. If you like, I can go into a bit of our history and evolution.
Sure. And I'll follow up with a couple of questions, but absolutely, let's do that first.
Sure. So, of course, ACL was formed in 2012, actually in April of 2012, which, of course, is why we just had our 10-year anniversary. And it combined the Administration on Aging, the Department of Health and Human Services Office on Disability, as well as the Administration on Developmental Disabilities. So those three offices were combined to form the initial ACL. And then in 2014, we added to our portfolio the State Health Insurance Assistance Program. That's commonly known as SHIP, or in New York, it's known as the HICAP program. That program used to be with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, but again, that was transitioned over to ACL in 2014. And that was followed in 2015 by the transfer of the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research, as well as the Independent Living and Assistive Technology Program, to ACL from the Department of Education. And that same year, the Limb Loss Resource Center was transferred from CDC to ACL.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, in 2016, Congress transferred the Traumatic Brain Injury Program from the Health Resources and Services Administration to ACL. So over time, we've added in mainly some more programs focusing on disability.
Right.
And you see, Ron, as one agency, we're better able to leverage knowledge and best practices to meet the similar needs of people with disabilities and older people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, there are times when the consolidation and streamlining, helps collaboration. And I think that this is a case where, you folks have done that. And it's done in sort of a step-by-step evolutionary way. I think for me, one of the important things is that the essence of your mission deals with a lot of things that Americans are worried about, which is, they want to stay in their homes, or they want to age in place, whatever place that is. Sometimes the place is a different geographical place. Sometimes it's a different kind of, residency. But I think that that they need some guidance and tools about how to do this and what's available to help them do that. And I think that they want to stay in their community, whatever that community is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the misconceptions is that people, I think, especially now, there are lots of questions about, well, what is the government doing? And I think that, to me, this is where the government really can be a partner in your life. It's not saying the government is going to take care of you, but there are resources that we can share as communities. And I know that you do a lot of partnering with local agencies, right? So you
Yep.
drive down the services. Talk a little bit about that. How do you work with the local? I guess they're called AAAs, right?
Sure. I'm happy to talk about our Older Americans Act work, but I do want to mention before we get to that, what you were talking about, supporting folks
Hmm.
and everybody wants to age in place. I do just want to mention some statistics for you that I think people will
Sure.
find interesting. So by 2040, there are going to be about 80 million people in the United States who are 65 and older. That's more than twice as many people who were 65 and older as there were in 2000.
Right.
That's a huge increase. And the 85 and older population is projected to more than double
Right.
from 6.6 million in 2019 to more than 14 million in 2040. So we've got to find ways to support more and more people to age in place and stay at home. And a lot of the programs that ACL is focusing on, in particular the Older Americans Act, which I'm going to get into in a second because you
Sure.
raised our area agencies on aging, our programs get at the social determinants of health. I don't know if that's a term that you're familiar with, but those are social conditions that are seen as affecting people's health. Things like your degree of economic security, your access to education and healthcare, what your neighborhood is like. Is there a lot of violence in your neighborhood? Do you have access to transportation? Do you have clean drinking water? Things like that. A lot of ACL's programs are getting at those social determinants of health. Social determinants of health, I've seen different estimates of anywhere from like six, or have determined something like 60 to 80% of your health, of your overall health. And a lot of the work that our agencies are doing is getting at those social determinants of health. And that, my friend, is the Older Americans Act and our area agencies on aging. So I'm happy to talk to you about those services and programs that we're doing that are helping people to age in place.
Yeah. Let's move on. Let's get to that. Sure.
Okay, so the Older Americans Act, of course, funding comes from Congress to ACL. ACL then distributes that funding based on population figures to the states and territories that participate in the Older Americans Act program. Each state has a state unit on aging. And then that state, in turn, distributes those funds to its area agencies on aging in order to provide services at the local level to folks. The idea is that it's the local provider agencies who are in the communities know best how to serve people in their communities. So we're pushing the funding down, and it's the area agencies on aging who are contracting to provide the services in their communities. And in some cases, depending on the service, they may provide the service directly themselves. And I'm happy to talk to you about the variety of services that we provide.
Sure, sure. We're gonna take a break shortly, but why don't we start on that and then we'll continue after. But so let's give a couple of examples.
Sure. One example is, of course, I think our best known program, the Home Delivered Meal Program,
Hmm.
which is offered under Title 3C of the Older Americans Act. We also have the Congregate Meal Program, where people go to senior centers and enjoy lunch together. Under Title 3B of the Older Americans Act, we offer a variety of supportive services. There's a large laundry list of services that states and AAAs are allowed to provide, and they select the services they want to provide. They provide in-home services and personal care services, case management services, senior center activities, legal assistance, and a variety of other kinds of services for folks under